Ah, no, that's the way to develop a good smartphone on the cheap. Piggyback on an existing, well-received handset and add your own distinctive twists, if they're worth having. BlackBerry's latest venture is the DTEK50, an Alcatel Idol 4, i.e. as reviewed in the last phone show, but with a BlackBerry back cover and the trademark messaging and security software instead of Alcatel's bundle. Well, why not? The DTEK50 features FIPS2 hardware encryption, rapid security patching, a secure boot process, and a hardened Android OS core, apparently, plus Android for Work and Google Play for Work, as well as support for BlackBerry's full enterprise mobility management suite, BBM, BlackBerry Hub, the BlackBerry Intelligent Keyboard, and a customizable action key. Wow. The Alcatel Idol 4 hardware was terrific, so all this does bode well if you're into this sort of thing. As a reminder, a 5.2-inch 1080p display, a Snapdragon 617 processor with 3GB of RAM, and stereo JBL branded speakers. That's impressed. Of course, BlackBerry will start the price far too high, they always do, but nice try anyway. Over in China, Gionee has launched the M6, the smaller of a device pair, and yet still with a large 5.5-inch AMOLED screen and wait for it, 5,000 mAh battery, 4GB of RAM and 32GB, 64 or even 128GB of storage. The M6 has a super secure fingerprint scanner and no headphone jack. This is starting to be a trend, people, and I'm still not sure how I feel about it. The M6 should work its way out into world markets in a few months, hopefully. And now, as John Cleese used to say, for something completely different, this is the CAT S60, and it's unashamedly aimed at those working in tough environments, typically the building industry, but also potentially extreme sportsmen and women. Ted from PSC was drawn to a number of its selling points for use by a regular user like you and I, though. The 105 decibel speaker, the ruggedness without compromising on specs, and yes, the main gimmick, the thermal imaging camera. In truth, the latter's novelty wears off in minutes, so you really truly have to have a need for a thermal camera to even consider this as a factor. Which is a shame, since the thermal camera is both bulky and expensive, while I'm sure that some workman on a building site or in a maintenance job might need the facility to find hidden wires and so on, or to check the temperature of materials. I'd argue that there's a much larger market for people who want the specs and a supreme ruggedness here without necessarily needing the FLIR camera, and for whom the CAT S60 could be £200 cheaper without it. As it is, it's well over £500 here in the UK, but holding it, there's no doubt that you're holding a serious tool. You've heard of Jerry Rig Everything's famous bend tests. If he tried bending the S60, he'd break both his thumbs trying to budge this a millimetre. It's that solid, with very thick aluminium frame. It's correspondingly heavy too, at 215 grams. Gulp. This is not something for the average trouser pocket. Fully IP68 specified, so water and dust proof, this uses flaps rather than internal seals because of the intended environment. On a building site, for example, open ports would quickly get fouled by sand and debris, so we have flaps galore here. I'll run round them in order. SOS, hiding a red emergency button. Press this to message your specified emergency contacts along with your location. It's a nice idea. I guess a beam might have fallen across you, and anyway, you can call for help. Then we have micro USB data and charging, and then headphones, again an open 3.5mm jack. Wouldn't survive long with dust and debris around. Finally, we have the biggest flap of all here on the back. You can spot it highlighted in orange, covering the dual SIM and micro SD bays. This flap doesn't seem as sturdy as the rest, but it is sealed, and doubtless CAT have done their sums, so let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Physical Android controls are a break from recent tradition here at the bottom, but make perfect sense in a rugged world where you'll often be using gloves anyway, though I'd like to have seen green and red call and hang-up buttons too, as in the old days of physical button phones. The 4.7-inch screen's capacitive but quite tough, Gorilla Glass 4, and seemingly with extra thickness. It's not quite as sensitive as other recent phones, but hey, this baby needs to be super tough, in which context it's fine. Inside, there's a Snapdragon 617 chipset with 3GB of RAM, 32GB of onboard storage, plus a huge 3800 mAh battery. That's a lot for a 720p screen phone. And quick charge 2.0 spec. This is a ruggedized handset with surprisingly modern internals. On to specifics. The thermal camera is low resolution at just VGA, but does include spot temperatures and still and video capture. And it's brilliant at locating hot components, even through walls sometimes. There's a programmable launch button on the S60 side, and the idea is that you assign this to the FLIR camera, though it's really up to you. There's also a long press you can assign to something different. The much vaunted 105 dB speaker down at the bottom turns out to live up to the claims, though 105 decibel isn't quite as loud as the numbers sound. Still, there's decent volume and fidelity. For any off-duty YouTube or music purposes, here's a demo. This is full volume. There's nice bass, good range of frequencies. You can adjust this, as I'll come to later on. Beautiful top end. Hey, stick 2 of these in. Full front stereo, and the Marshall London could have a contender. Wow. Pretty good anyway. Interestingly and uniquely, there are physical switches, top and bottom of the S60 front, marked in gold. These throw an extra membrane over the bottom microphone main speaker and, using the top switch, over the earpiece, increasing the water resistance to 5 meter from 2 meter. I can't conceive of a use case wherein you'd know in advance that you wanted the phone to survive the extra pressure, and the standard 2 meter mode is needed in order to receive calls and to use the phone normally. Oh well, no doubt there's a diver somewhere eyeing this up for taking deep water video. The main camera is a typical modern 13 megapixel unit with dual LED flash, along with a 5 megapixel front-facing one. Nothing special from either of these. They're perfectly serviceable in good light and would be more than adequate for the target market. Pretty rubbish in low light though. Video recordings at 1080p too, which would be more than fine also, again in daylight when played back later in the boardroom or the site office. There's also Bluetooth 4.1, NFC, up to N Wi-Fi, FM radio, very useful in the great outdoors, of course, all the GPS variants, LTE, and more or less stock Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow, with the latest July 2016 security update arriving during the review period. I'm normally down on third-party app stores and directories, but the front and center app toolbox is a very useful curated way into all the specialist outdoor and rugged applications in the Play Store. Very helpful. The S60 is full of extras, part bloatware, part useful. There's Android Pay, preloaded. I'm sure we'll see more of this. AVG antivirus, oh no, not needed at all, but at least it comes as just an installer that you can just remove. A support web wrapper for the CAT phone site, a licensed copy of File Commander, Hike, a combined weather and track logging utility, Max Audio, a system audio equalizer with a preset for construction, optimized for ultra loud middle frequencies, for example, hearing a speakerphone call while there's a bulldozer next to you. Speaker Dry, utility that exercises the speaker after you dump the phone in water. The claim is that it dries out the membrane more quickly. Wow. And Zello, a licensed walkie-talkie push-to-talk application that works over a data network to communicate with other users. Phew. The display of the CAT S60 is bright and easily visible outdoors, plus the 720p resolution fits well with the 4.7-inch dimensions. Yes, I'd have liked a slightly larger display in the form factor, but hey, all that structure and protection does at least explain the hefty bezels. Add all of this together, and aside from the thermal camera, you can see that this would indeed also fulfill the needs of the intrepid explorer. But again, let's knock off £200 and do without the FLIR. So maybe a CAT S61 is needed for the hiking and mountain biking market. I think so. I think that'll do well. In the meantime, we have an almost perfect fit for the professional in a potentially mucky or wet job. Perhaps a builder, plumber, an architect, and so on. And a very interesting device for the rest of us. It's certainly a million miles from the average slim mid-range Android phone. This is the CAT S60.